What's up, everybody? Welcome in as we go through yet another witness who testifies to inconsistencies around Chad Daybell's version of the events of what happened to his wife, Tammy Daybell, the night of her death. And this one is pretty damning until we hear cross, which adds yet another bit of reasonable doubt or cuts into the credibility of this witness. And we're going to break this witness down tonight to see what she said, how reliable it is. And I want to hear from you, whether you believe her or not, and whether or not you think this proves beyond a reasonable doubt Chad's involvement with Tammy's death. So we're going to jump in here with Tammy's second cousin and hear what she says Chad told her happened the night of Tammy's death. First, what Chad told her dad, and then what Chad told her mom, and then about the inconsistencies and how she explained it to her mom, which makes your eyebrows rise no matter what you think happened that day. Why would you lie? Why would you tell the story differently? Why would you change the times? Why would you create these inconsistencies if you're Chad Daybell and you had nothing to do with this? So we'll start there. Then we'll talk about how credible is her testimony once we get to cross.
Are you related to Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
How are you related to her?
She's my mom's cousin, so my second cousin.
Would that be your mom's first cousin?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention back to October 19th of 2019. Did you that day learn of Tammy's passing?
Yes.
How did you learn about it?
I was with my mom, and she received a phone call and then told me about it after.
What was your reaction to hearing that she passed?
I was very saddened by the news and very confused and just overall very sad.
I'd like to back up a little bit. Can you explain to the jury how often, if at all, did you have contact with Tammy during your childhood?
I didn't know Tammy super well. Like, we saw her at family events, but I was younger, so I was like playing with her kids. But yeah, we would see them at family activities.
So you learned of her passing. Did you have occasion to attend her funeral?
Yes, I did.
The best you can recall, when was her funeral relative to her passing?
It was a week after her passing-ish.
You think? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you also attend a viewing?
Yes, I did.
And where was the viewing at?
It was at a church house in Springville.
Is that the same place the funeral was held?
Yes.
When you went to the viewing, did you go by yourself or did you go with anybody else?
I went with my sister, and then I met family at the viewing.
What other family did you meet at the viewing?
I had my grandparents there, some aunts and uncles, and then my mom and dad came later.
Did you have the opportunity while at that viewing to go through the viewing line?
Yes, I did.
How many times do you recall going through it that night?
I went through twice.
Who did you go through with the first time?
I went through with my dad, Lindsay Parker, first.
And do you recall, was Chad Daybell in the viewing line?
Yes.
Relative to where Chad was, were there any of the Daybell children that were also in the line?
Yes.
Where were they at relative to where Chad was at in the line?
Chad was first in line, and then there was a casket, so he was at the head, and then the kids were at her feet, about 6 feet away from Chad.
Based on your own perception, do you think that any conversation that you may have had with Chad in that moment would have been heard or been able to have been heard by the children?
No.
So when you were in the line with your dad, did the two of you have a conversation with Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury the nature of that conversation?
Yeah. So my dad asked him what had happened. That said that he was confused.
Judge, I'm going to object. There's levels of hearsay here.
Well, if they're
She can't say what her dad said or the questions her dad asked, but she is allowed to say what Chad said because we know there is an exception to hearsay for a party opponent or the defendant in a criminal case. His statements that he made are admissible as an exception to hearsay, even though they are made out of court. And even if they want to use them for the truth of the matter asserted, they are allowed to do so. And that's what they do here because defendants' own words usually are the best evidence against them, especially when they tell inconsistent stories like Chad Daybell's about to do here.
for example, if they're soliciting comments of the defendant, would be an exception. If they're comments of the father, it would be hearsay. So I'm not sure where the witness is going with this. Maybe you can direct the witness to avoid that hearsay.
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, just in context of what Chad may have said in that conversation, can you explain to the jury what you first remember him saying about anything?
Yeah, he said that Tammy had been sick that day. He said that she had been vomiting and coughing. And then around 10 p.m., she had vomited again and then came to his office and said that she was feeling a little bit better. And he said that she was going to bed and that he stayed in his office working. And then around 1 a.m., he went upstairs and found Tammy on the floor. And he said that she had rolled out of the bed and was on the floor and that he found her cold and already passed.
So he was in his office. Tammy went to his office. She did not say Tammy walked downstairs to his office in this version of the story. That'll be important later. Tammy goes to bed. She wasn't feeling well. Then Chad walks upstairs to find Tammy. Obviously inconsistent, since Chad said he was laying next to Tammy and woke up and saw her like that, rolling out of the bed or rolled out of the bed. Time will get and be important here, but so will people walking up and downstairs. So again, this story at first glance seems like, oh, wow, that's definitely different than the stories Chad has told throughout this trial.
So that's a lot of information. Just for clarity, I'm going to ask some follow-up. So when you said he described this, was he talking about the night that she passed?
Yes.
I think you said that she came to him at 10 o'clock. Is that right?
Yes.
What time do you remember, if at all, that he said that Tammy went to bed that night?
He said Tammy went to bed around 10,
And what time was it that you said he finally went to bed himself?
around 1 a.m.,
And when was it that he said that he found Tammy on the floor, passed away?
around 1 a.m.
So
So right when he walked in to go to bed, she was already passed when he found her, not laying in bed next to her. Okay, all this is important for all the other medical testimony and how long she had been there and what signs her body was showing about how long she had passed and whether or not he could have walked up or heard something or laying next to her, whatever it may be. It's all important. And this is an inconsistent story than what we've heard throughout the trial.
is there any question in your mind that that's precisely what he said?
That's an objection to bolstering, but there was no objection there. You can't say, is there any doubt in your mind that you're absolutely positive that that's what he said?
During that interaction with him, did you observe anything about his tone or demeanor?
Yes.
What did you notice?
I noticed that he seemed calmer than I would have expected, and that he would get emotional only when my dad would get emotional and then would stop, like once my dad stopped crying.
Why did that stand out to you?
It stood out to me because I would have expected someone who just lost their partner to be a little more distraught, and he seemed calmer than I would have expected him to be.
And in fact, are you married?
Yes.
And this has come in a lot. Was he really upset? Was he not? The jury's going to have to determine how much that matters, whether he could have been faking it or whether it was legitimate. It can be legitimate even if you did commit the crime, things like that. They're going to have to determine all of that and all the credibility of these witnesses. And if Chad Daybell takes the stand, they'll obviously have a better opportunity to do that. We will see.
Now, later that evening, you said, I think earlier, that you'd also went through the line with your mother.
Yes.
About how long after the time you went through with your dad did you also go through the line with your mother?
About 2 hours.
Could you please?
So she went through the line with her dad in a viewing. You know, you go up there and you talk to the family. Then 2 hours later, she goes through the line with her mom. So will Chad tell the same story?
explain to the jury your experience when you went through the line with your mother?
Yes. So they were talking, and Chad was telling us what happened. And he said that she had been coughing that day, and that she'd been coughing pretty violently. So he was worried about her. Between 9 and 10, she came down to his office and said that she was going to rest and go to bed. He said that he was worried about her, so he went to bed at the same time. And then at around midnight, he woke up to her rolling out of bed and hitting the floor. He said that he went to check on her and had found that she had passed.
So a few differences there, obviously. Talks about downstairs, talks about Chad going to bed at the same time as Tammy because he was worried about her. Time of death was different. It was 12 o'clock that he found her instead of 1 a.m. He went to bed with her because he was concerned as opposed to going to bed at 1 a.m. So Chad's telling two very inconsistent stories, just 2 hours apart, hasn't had time to get his story straight at this point. And those inconsistencies are going to be very damning.
What was your immediate reaction when you heard that account of things?
I was confused at first.
Why?
Because it was inconsistent with what I had heard earlier that evening.
Did you say anything at that time?
No,
Did you ask Chad any questions about the explanations at that time?
no.
Why not?
I was confused, and I also didn't feel comfortable. The conversation was being had between Chad and my parents.
So without saying anything that she may have said in response, did you later explain this difference to your mother
Yes.
and to anybody else?
To my mom, and then later to Samantha
When did you first explain it to your mom?
that night after the viewing.
That's it for direct.
Cross-examination.
Enforcement?
Now here we go for cross.
I've met with investigators a few times.
Pros-
I met with him once about a month ago, outside of court proceedings.
And he talks about, you've met with the prosecutor, which is important when we're going to get to her inconsistencies. It's important that she has met with the prosecutors to prep her testimony. And then still, this is her testimony that she's absolutely positive, absolutely sure about, that the prosecutor is the one. And maybe this is why Daybell didn't object, because you want to lock her in. She's absolutely positive that this is what she heard, and specifically heard it this way.
Things no.
Now, your testimony is that at midnight, Tammy went downstairs to check on Chad in his office. Is that right?
10 p.m.
Objection misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
Did you mention about him going downstairs to meet with Tammy going downstairs to meet with Chad at any point?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you make reference to?
When I was talking to Chad with my father,
Yeah.
he said that Tammy had gone down to say that she had thrown up and was feeling a little better and then was going to bed.
Okay.
So Pryor doesn't know which part he got wrong, because he's focused on the downstairs part of going into the office, but he said the wrong time accidentally. He said midnight instead of 10 p.m. But what he wants her to do is he wants to lock her in the fact that she said Tammy went down or downstairs.
Okay. So Tammy was upstairs in her bedroom, and then she went downstairs to go into an office to talk to Chad. Is that what you understood?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that this is a one-story home, ma'am?
Oops. You're positive, you're sure Tammy went downstairs. He locks it in, and then he just drops it. It's a one-story house. Now, is that important? Could she have walked across the hall? Could she have walked down the hallway instead of down the stairs? And all this still be true, and Chad telling inconsistent stories based on the timing and what happened? Absolutely. But when you're judging the credibility of a witness and they get a material fact like that wrong, that at least calls into question their credibility, especially when you've added on top that they have prepped with the prosecution before testifying. Now, she does, I think, help herself a little bit here explaining why and what we hear from redirect. So we're going to hold on to that, but it's a great point. This is why lawyers have to listen, and every word is important. Words matter and definitions matter. So when you hear them give a statement that they're absolutely sure about, and then it turns out a major fact of that is not true, pretty sure Chad Daybell wasn't, lying about that, saying that she went upstairs or downstairs. That's easily provably false. Doesn't mean he wasn't lying about other stuff, but I don't think he said that. So if she's wrong about him saying downstairs or upstairs, what else could she be wrong about? Is, I think, the point John Pryor trying to make here. And I want to know what you guys think, because I think her testimony is pretty damning to Chad Daybell if it's true, but we know at least part of it is either mistaken or false.
No, I've never been to their home.
Okay. And then after, again, when you were in the line with your mother and you mentioned something about going downstairs, which downstairs were we going to?
Again, I haven't been to their home.
Okay. Nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Ma'am, is there any question in your mind that you testified as accurately as you possibly can today?
Judge, I'm going to object. It
It's object to bolstering. Again, I guess Pryor does actually object here.
goes beyond cross-examination.
Well, I'll sustain. I think that's actually.
It's actually bolstering. You can't say, are you sure? Without a doubt in your mind, are you positive? You can't ask questions to witnesses like that to bolster the truthfulness of their testimony. But I kind of think the state knew this was coming, which is why they asked it on direct already.
An improper question. You can ask a different question if you like, Mr. Wixom.
Ma'am, when you heard Mr. Daybell explain the events with your dad, did your dad ask him anything about the layout of the home?
No.
Did you ask him anything?
No.
Do you doubt at all that he said that he?
Judge, I'm going to object. He's trying to bolster the witness. It's
There you
inappropriate.
go.
Well, I'll let you finish the question, Mr. Wixom, and then I'll rule.
Thank you. Is there any question in your mind that what Chad said to your dad was that Tammy had went downstairs?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
So as an improper final question, but I do think it helped her a little bit, because it's not any doubt in your mind that Tammy went downstairs. It's not, is there any doubt in your mind that Chad went upstairs? Is there any doubt in your mind that that's what Chad said? So she's basically saying, I don't know what's true. I don't know what's false. All I know is he told two different versions of the same story to my parents. That's what I would have liked her to end on. Obviously, can't tell the witnesses what to say, and you can't testify for them as lawyers, even though sometimes you really want to. It's like you want to crawl out of your own skin sometimes when it's not going well for you or one of your witnesses. But I think she got the point across at the very end that that's what he said. And the point really is, I don't know what was true or false. I just found it very surprising how he was acting. He wasn't as broken up as I would have thought he would have been. and he was telling different versions of the story to my mom and my dad just hours apart. So it seemed like he was hiding something or something was going on that he felt like he had to make up a story and he hadn't gotten his story straight yet. There could be some objectionable things there, but that I think would have really shredded his case with how he's trying to come across, trying to cover up this Tammy stuff, rush the funeral, rush all the proceedings, rush to get married to Lori and move away, rush to start their new lives and get rid of all the obstacles in their way. Because that's a story that tracks, and that's a story that I think a lot of the evidence points to. But I want to know what you guys think. Did this witness shred Chad Daybell's story with Tammy, or did John Pryor do a good enough job striking some of her credibility to still leave reasonable doubt open in your mind? So I went back and forth trying to determine whether or not to add this little clip in for context, but I think it's important. We talk about, and we have other witnesses that can either corroborate or differentiate what happened at a scene where they were there with a witness whose credibility is on the line. And the prior witness that we've just watched and discussed talked about a conversation that was had in front of her mom with Chad Daybell. So her mom took the stand, and let's hear how her mom explains that explanation. And I think it's important for a little bit of context that her mom has been to Chad Daybell's house. Her mom is very close with Tammy Daybell as her first cousin, and they're very close in age, and they were very close. So let's hear how she said the conversation went.
Young and healthy.
Did you have the opportunity to attend her funeral and viewing?
Yes, I did. I attended both the viewing on Monday and the viewing prior to the funeral on Tuesday.
Which Monday and Tuesday relative to the date she passed, do you remember?
The ones following it was really quick.
And you did attend the evening viewing on Monday?
That is correct.
Who did you attend it with?
I went alone. I had when I found out she was passed, I actually was on fall break in California, so I flew back on Monday. I think my flight got in like 5:45, and then I went to the funeral or the viewing after that.
When you were there, did you see your daughter Hannah?
Yeah, so when I walked in, I was really upset and kind of looked for someone comforting, like some family.
And did you and Hannah have the opportunity to go through the viewing line?
Yes, we did.
Were you standing next to each other when you did that?
Yeah, she was right next to me with her hand on me. Yeah,
Did you see Chad in that viewing line?
I did.
Did you observe anything about his emotional state or demeanor that night?
When I was going through, he was just talking with people, and when someone would cry, he would cry, but he was mostly just visiting with whoever was coming up to him.
Did anything about the way he was acting strike you as unusual?
I felt like he should have been more sad, I guess.
Did you, at that point in time, did you engage him in any conversation?
Well, I had gone through the line really quick the first time, and then the second time, I went through and hugged her kids, and then walked past the casket, and then went and talked to Chad.
Was Hannah with you when you went to talk to Chad?
Yeah, yes, she was.
Can you explain to the jury, what was it that you and Chad talked about? What did Chad say?
I just went up to him and told him I was sorry for his loss, and we hugged, and I asked him what happened.
Did he say?
He said that Tammy wasn't feeling well and she was coughing a lot, and she threw up. Well, he asked if she was okay. She threw up, and she came to tell him that she threw up and that she was going to bed. He asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, she's feeling better after she threw up, and then she went to bed. And then we both started crying, and then before I left him, he told me that Tammy loved you so much.
Did he say anything else or more specifically about how he found that Tammy had passed away that night?
Yeah, he said that he had so she went to bed, and he stayed up working, and then he went to bed later. I think he said Tammy went to bed around 10 o'clock, and he went to bed later, and then he woke up in the morning because she rolled out of bed or fell out of bed, and that's what woke him up.
Anything else that you can remember in that conversation that he described about how he found Tammy?
She was kind of half on and half off the bed.
The next day, did you have the opportunity?
So that's much closer in line than with what we've heard from a lot of the other witnesses. There's kind of a ton of different variations of this story, but not the same as the story as her daughter told, walking upstairs, at least one version of the story, upstairs, and then finding her there at 1 a.m. when he walked upstairs half in, half out of the bed. And by the way, this witness, incredibly credible, single version of the story, falls in line, at least similar enough with a lot of the other witnesses. I don't think anybody's really going to be able to dig at her credibility, but also not as damning for Chad as her daughter. And that's why I think it's important to kind of differentiate, but then also see kind of the different versions. And we're going to see how John Pryor here, I'm going to jump the cross, and we're going to see how he points out that difference in the two statements and how he, again, is going to use the mother's testimony to poke at the credibility of their daughter's testimony again, which I'm just showing you and illustrating how hard a jury's job is when actually scrutinizing all this testimony. Now, maybe they've made up their mind. Maybe the evidence is enough for them at this point as the state continues to pile on, as they should, because they have this evidence and it's important to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I do think that, and that's why I ended up playing this part, Pryor does point out these inconsistencies in how let's believe this version of the story and just kind of throw away the last witness, because you as the jury can believe all, some, or none of what a witness testifies to, because you as the jury are the judge of the credibility of the witnesses and the facts in the case.
You and Tammy knew each other quite well as you were both growing up at a young age, right?
That is correct.
And then in 2015, when Tammy and Chad moved with the family to Utah, that contact dissipated quite a bit. Would that be fair?
Yes, when they moved to Idaho, that happened.
Right. And would it surprise you to learn that we have Tammy's phone records and correspondence, all her electronic data? Would it surprise you to learn that in the last year of her life, we don't have any communications between you and her of any kind?
That felt like a bit below the belt, as John Pryor is known to do. I probably would have just left that out. I'm not sure what relevance it has, except for maybe to make the jury not like John Pryor again. So I'm sure the comments are going to be filled with that. And I get it. I don't think that was necessary, but he is going to get to the difference in her story and her daughter's story here soon, I promise.
I feel like that's not correct.
Okay. You feel it's not correct, or do you know that there was no communication between you and her the last year of her life?
We would message on Facebook and text. I don't think that's correct.
Okay. So it's Facebook is what you're telling me. That's how you communicated with her?
Messaging and yeah.
Yeah.
And she would call me.
Now, when you were in the line on the first day of the services, you mentioned that you were there with your daughter, correct? Or with Ms. Munoz.
I came in by myself and then she came up to me.
But you were standing there with Ms. Munoz when you went through the line together, is that right?
Mhm.
And at that point, what your testimony is that Chad told you at the time that he woke up in the morning and Tammy had fallen out of bed in the morning. Is that correct?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
That Tammy fell out of the bed and that she had passed away, and then that he discovered her in the morning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that she had been having a coughing fit all night. Is that right?
She had been coughing prior to bed. Yes.
Okay. And while you and Ms. Munoz were standing there together, was there any discussion about Tammy or Chad going upstairs or downstairs in the house?
I can't recall.
Okay. So you don't recall that ever happening?
I don't recall. I
Okay.
don't remember it.
Okay, Judge, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And he finishes there with his strongest point, that she never recalls it. She does not recall any discussion of going upstairs or downstairs. And her daughter and the state, doubled and tripled down. Are you positive that's what you heard? Are you absolutely positive that's what you heard? Doesn't seem like it holds a lot of weight to me, but I want to know what you guys hear, because you guys are much more representative of the jury. So please let me know in the comments. I can't wait to read the comments. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to our page. If you're still watching the Chad Daybell trial, let me know in the comments and we will continue to cover it. As long as you guys still have questions, we will have answers. Thanks a lot. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast, with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.